the only show that's 3 dimensions away from Cocaine Bear actually being a good movie. I'm your host, 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Cocaine Bear, released in 2023. Cocaine Bear is directed by Elizabeth Banks, who you may know who was stars in a lot of movies like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, Zack and Miri, Wet Hot American Summer, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and so many other movies such as Role Models. And she's also a great director. She directed Pitch Perfect 2. She also directed a segment in movie 43 that is actually pretty funny. It's more funnier than this movie. And she also directed Charlie's Angels 2019, which I really liked that movie. I thought that was a really good movie, compared to this movie. But I really think she is a good director, and I will say that. She directed this movie, and also the movie stars Kerry Russell, Alden Ehrenreich, O'Shara Jackson, and Ray Liotta. The movie is essentially claims to be based on a true story about what happens when a bear inhales a bunch of cocaine and goes on a killing spree. The true story of this movie is not that. The true story is just that what happened is the cartel dropped some cocaine, and then the guy jumped out of the plane with it, and then of course the guy's body was never found, and then the cocaine was found, and a bear fell into like one of the national parks, and the bear actually happened to engulf the cocaine, and then the bear, after like 3 days of agonizing pain, died. The bear didn't go on a killing spree or nothing like that. The bear just ate the cocaine, and then I guess it walked around, and it got really bad intestines because it's cocaine. So the bear just killed it. Basically was in so much pain before it passed away. That's the true story. This movie, though, is the bear inhales the cocaine and then decides to go on a killing spree. It's basically a creature feature movie. And I could easily see this movie being made in the 70s or 80s because it feels like one of those movies like, oh, they had a bear. It felt almost like if the bear was real, you would probably, and this movie was made in the 70s, you would probably hear a story about, oh, they had a bear and they were like, hey, we have a real bear. Hey, let's make a movie about a bear on cocaine. The guy's like, I got cocaine, I got a bear. Let's make a movie about a bear on cocaine. Hey, yeah, let's do it. I could easily see like the Friday the 13th producers, or the producers of Frogs, or the producers of Crocodile or something, or Jaws even. Like I could see Richard Sennett even making this. I don't think he would make it, but I think other producers I could see in the 70s and 80s would easily make this movie like in that time period. And honestly, if they made it, it would be a real bear. They would use a real bear, and they'd probably give him sugar or something to make instead of cocaine. And that would be the whole premise of the movie. And then, but the acting in this movie, everything about it feels very dated. Like, this movie feels like it should have came out like 30 years ago. Maybe even 40. There are things I do like about this movie. I do not like this movie, but like there are things I do like about it, I like the direction. I think the directing is actually really good. Elizabeth Banks is a fantastic director. Once again, I think she is fantastic. I liked her. She's a great director. I've never ever seen something I didn't like of hers. Even movie 43, I thought was a stupid movie. But her sketch, I thought was really unique. Even though it's messed up and offensive, I thought it was unique. And I thought it was actually really funny. She would never make that sketch today because it's very offensive and people would be upset about it. But but I think she's always been a great director. I honestly think I liked her Charlie's Angels movie, and I like her as a director. I like her as a director. I did not like this movie. I thought the directing was great. I thought the acting was what I had an issue with. What I will say is I do thought the direction was great. Everything felt like a good director made this movie. The kills were fantastic. Like, there was some great kills in this movie. Honestly, the movie's not really funny, but like I really, really laughed at the kills in this movie because there was just because I hated the acting so much to where I was like, just let the bear kill everybody. And every time the bear somebody shows up in the movie, the bear just kills them. And I'm just like, man, the bear is you see the bear eating people's arms, ripping their arms off, and you see the bear ripped off somebody's head. The bear even just the bear uses someone as a human shield to stop them to shoot. And just eats people's intestines. It's like something I'm like, all right, give me that. That's what all I want. The movie's not like the kills were probably the best part of the movie. Although if it's not like the gory, like I said, my cousin, she saw it first and said, oh, this movie is like, oh, it is brutal. And I'm like, have you seen Terrifier 2? That's a more brutal movie than this. Like, this is mid compared to Terrifier 2. And the gore, there's some gory stuff in the movie. Obviously, like, there's a scene, spoilers, yeah, that the sheriff, the Caber's right there, and the sheriff shoots a junkie, and a bullet goes through his head, and blows his head right off. I'm just like, it was so stupid, but I was laughing because it was like how stupid that scene was. Just one of those moments. I also thought, like, the acting I did not like in the movie. I did not like, but I thought O'Shea Jackson did a great job in this movie. Everybody in the movie was just overly acting, but his acting was actually, I feel like he was the most realist person in the movie. Maybe Ray Liotta also I thought was pretty good, but I thought O'Shea really, like, he actually was like, he felt like this was a real movie, while everybody else was just like, felt like they were acting for a paycheck. But I thought his was the most. Although there was one scene in the movie where when the bear was using Alden Ehrenreich as a human shield, he was kind of starting to smirk up like he was about to break character. So I'm like, I caught him there. I'm like, I caught you there, man. You were good up until that scene, man. That's when I caught you there. And also, it has a great soundtrack. The soundtrack, it actually feels like an 80s film. The soundtrack is a very 80s soundtrack. I really felt like this movie did feel like in the 80s. Because, like, a lot of movies that are set in the 80s, like Wonder Woman 84, they don't really feel like 80s films because you're like, this feels like a modern film, just pretend to be the 80s. This movie, though, felt like an 80s film. Like, I believe this was an 80s film. And I really liked that aspect of it. There also was one thing I liked at the beginning where they did a commercial about, this is your brain on drugs. I kind of wish they would have stuck with that. That would have made it really good for me, because what if this was a PSA on anti-drug movie? Like in The Bear is essentially death, because if you do drugs, you will die. That's essentially, like at the beginning of the movie when it's like, this is your brain on drugs, don't do drugs. I thought this was going to be like a sophisticated, well thought out movie. I'm like, oh my god, this is actually going to be a much deeper movie than I thought it was going to be. I was expecting it just to be like a B-rated slasher film, but it was much worse than that. Like, I'm like, no, this was much worse. I thought it was going to be like another Anaconda or something, but no, it was much worse than Anaconda. I watched this movie though, and I think if they would have just stuck with that though, like if they would have made the bear like essentially the drug that goes around killing people, like eventually like the cocaine, like the PSA at the beginning, and then every time someone hails cocaine, the bear kills them. That right there would make it more sophisticated. But the bear doesn't just kill people that's on cocaine. The bear kills everyone in sight, and that's where it really lost me, because I'm like, this is not an anti-drug movie. This is just a dumb animal killing movie. That's all it is. Like, I mean, if this could have been a much deeper film, and I think with different directors or a different screenwriter, this could have been. Like, for instance, what I didn't like about the movie, there's a lot of things I didn't like about the movie, but I just felt like that was the one thing I felt like it was not, like it could have been much deeper than it was, and it felt like they just took the easy road when it felt like there could have been a better road to choose from. Like, this could have been a well thought out movie about, man, this is actually much deeper. Like, in 10 years, people could have been like, Miracle Cane Bear is actually a much deeper movie about anti-drug movement. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, there's also, the acting is just atrocious. Like, everyone in the movie is a terrible freaking actor in this movie. Like, and the sad thing is, I would not be upset if these were not known actors, but like half the cast has Emmys for their acting. Okay, they have all run awards for acting. Okay, like literally, you have great actors. Kira Russell is a great actress. She was in The Americans and Felicity. Even in the Planet of the Apes movie, she was great. She was even great in Rise of Skywalker, but she's terrible in this movie. Alden Ehrenreich, he is just annoying in this movie. Look, I was not a big fan of him as Han Solo, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt. He's terrible in this movie. I'd rather watch him as Han Solo. O'Shea Jackson is probably the best performance in the movie, but that's not saying much, because everyone in this movie is terrible. Although he did a great character once, him and Ray Liotta are probably the best two things in the movie. Everybody else is a terrible, like Jesse Tyler Ferguson. I love him in Modern Family. He's a fantastic actor. I've seen him act in other things, and I think he's great. But in this movie, plays the dumbest character ever. I'm like, he is so dumb. The way he talks. I mean, it feels like they think that Southern people are hillbillies. That's what it felt like. I was watching this going, this is basically a fuck you to Southern people almost. Because this is how stupid they think Southern people are. Because I'm sitting there watching this going, like, oh man, oh no, you can't do that, man. I'm like, oh Jesus. I'm like, why are you talking like that, man? Like, this is not Deliverance, okay? Even I have issue with Deliverance because they're so stupid, like they portray, but I understand why in Deliverance. Like, I understand why, but still, this one portrays just everyone in the movie acts like that. Like they're basically two brain cells away from being hillbillies. Like that's just I hated the actors, especially the characters in the movie. Just like everybody in the movie, the acting, even the child acting is terrible. I was watching it, okay, and a friend of mine was over, and he goes, "Man, that child is a terrible actor." I'm like, "Yes, everyone in the movie acts like this. There are terrible actors in this movie. This is terrible acting." Also, the characters. The only reason characters in this movie exist is to be killed off in a seconds. Like literally, there's a character that just shows up. They're like, "Hey, we're hikers." Walks up and then just gets killed 10 seconds later. And I'm just like, what? Like paramedic drivers show up just so they can get killed 10 minutes later. I'm just like, why are you just literally, there's no emotional connection to these characters to where whenever I'm watching this, like I said, there's no point to even having characters. Like, you want us to root for characters, but every time you introduce a character, you kill them off in seconds. I'm like, how is that emotion? I cannot connect. All I see them as is meat. You're just basically, it's literally just showing people being killed, okay? How am I supposed to relate to this whenever I can't have no connection to a character? They try to give you the mom, but the mom's, the only character I could say is probably the mom that's looking for her daughter. I mean, that could be it. And there's also some subplot about kids doing drugs, and it doesn't really go nowhere. So I'm just like, this is just meaningless plot points in the movie. And also the CGI bear. I would rather, if this was 70s, they would use a real bear, but the CGI bear is just like, you could tell it's a CGI bear. I mean, there are some better CGI. Like The Revenant has a great CGI bear. Every time I see the cocaine bear, I'm just like, there is no, like, I don't feel like this is a real bear. This just doesn't scare me. This is just a CGI bear. Also, at the end of the movie, you find out, spoiler alert, that she has cubs, and then the whole reason she went on this killing spree is because she has cubs that she's protecting. And then they feed the cubs cocaine too. So apparently they're trying to say, oh, bear loves cocaine. If you give animals cocaine. Also, there's a stupid scene in the movie where the bear jumps to down a river, like they're down a waterfall, and then the guy drops cocaine. The bear goes into the hand in its nose, and then it opens its eyes to get back up. And just shit like that is where I'm like, this is so stupid. And just also like based on a true story. It's not based on a true story, and it's lying. It's false advertising. It's not based on, it's based on an idea. It should have said based on an idea of a true story. Or inspired by true events. That makes more sense than saying based on a true story, because people are going to think, oh, this really happened? No, it did not happen, okay? This is all a very much fictionalized version of that. And the script is just non-existent. The script is, the acting is atrocious. The script's terrible. Like, the movie, I really want to like this movie. I really wanted to. I went in this movie with, expect this to be like a fun movie. And instead, I walked out going, this is a terrible freaking movie. Like, honestly, I know it did okay at the box office. So I'm hoping they never make a sequel. Look, I like Elizabeth Banks. I hope she has a great career ahead of her. I hope she makes lots of more movies. I'm looking forward to whatever she does next. But this is not one of her best projects. This might be her worst project, because Pitch Perfect 2 is fantastic. Charlie's Angels, I really enjoyed. But I even liked her movie 43 sketch about Chloe Grace Moretz on her period. That, I know that was an offensive sketch, but it was a much better acted sketch than this movie. And I'm not, and I think honestly that sketch is really offensive. And like I said, but I thought it was better acted than this. Okay, and I honestly think that movie's terrible. It's a terrible freaking movie. But that sketch she directed, even though I think it is offensive, that sketch was better acted than this entire film. And that movie was terrible. And this movie is just not good. Honestly, if you want to watch it, it's on Peacock. Don't do it. I didn't buy the Blu-ray. There's no 4K, and I wonder why. It's terrible. Universal didn't want to put a 4K out for this movie. But yeah, this movie is not great. I would not recommend it. If you want to watch it for yourself, it's on Peacock. So I would just save your money watching on Peacock if you can. If I had to give this movie a grade, I would give it an F.
such good luck in nature.